Meet the Crew with your host, Lloyd Ellis.
Welcome back to Meet the Crew, and I'm your host, Lloyd Ellis here. And today we have a spectacular day for everybody. But before we get to that point, I got to make sure that you all hit that like, that subscribe, that little bell dingy, thingy. So that way you all can be notified when the next episode comes up. We're not too crazy about that monetization thing because we're probably going to kill that anyways within the context of what we have to say on this thing. But we do keep it PG just in case you do have some kiddos that are watching. But let's go ahead and get into it. Today, I have an extraordinary individual that is going to be joining us who must have the grandest of the grandest introductions. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, not going that route. No, you know how we do out here. B-Man, you there?
How's it going, Lloyd? Good to see you.
Hey, introduce yourself to the lovely interwebs.
My name is Bryan Naegele, and I'm a technical director and producer and show caller.
Well, for those laymen out there that don't necessarily know what that is, can you kind of explain a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I started out in the business as a lighting designer, moved up to be a production manager and technical director. So in that role, I'm responsible for all of the technical elements happening on a live production event, from labor and equipment logistics to managing the drawing, sometimes doing renderings, making sure that all of the pieces and parts work together. I like to joke that my job's done when all of the stuff that's supposed to blink is blinking and all the stuff that isn't supposed to blink stops blinking. And at that point, we're good to go. And, from a producer standpoint, I help manage content, show flows, work with the clients on what their show content is. And then as a show caller, play ringleader, roll through the event with the crew, call the cues, figure out how the show's going to go step by step. I joke that in that role, the job is to keep us all hurtling toward the same cliff at the same speed. So that's that goal. So yeah, it kind of depends on the project as to what I'm doing. The bulk of my work is as a technical director, probably 60% technical director, and the other 40% producer and show caller.
How'd you get into this, if I may ask, bud?
It actually started in college. I started off acting, and when I was a kid, I was in community theater and high school theater. And when I went to college, I needed a job. And I went to a small liberal arts college, and the jobs were pretty much work at the library or work in the scene shop. And I said, man, playing with power tools and building scenery, staying in the theater sounds like a whole lot better way to make a living than working in the library. So started working in the scene shop. I had done some tech theater stuff in high school, but started working in the scene shop and discovered that I was not a very good actor, but I was apparently pretty good at the technical side of things. And by the end of my freshman year, I was running the lighting department. And my mentor there was the TD of the set shop. And he was a freelance lighting designer, had an MFA in lighting, and said, stay in school, get your education. But if you want to make a living, the way to make a living in this business is not in theater. You won't make as much money as you'd like to. So he started taking me on corporate gigs on weekends and evenings. And so I started doing corporate even while I was in college, and just kept right on going with it. When I graduated from college, I got a BA in theater with an emphasis in lighting design, and was already freelancing. I actually had to turn down a couple of gigs to go back and graduate because I moved home, finished school, and then commencement was, like 3 weeks later. And I went home, did a couple of gigs, and then had to turn down some work to go back and actually do the commencement. So, and I just been busy ever since.
There's so many people out here right now that are under the same boat, especially with what's going on right now. We are still hearing the craziness of COVID-19, in case anybody didn't know that. Yeah, any of those folks that don't know that. But with that being said, how has COVID-19 affected you professionally, or even if you're with your family, if I may ask?
It's been a rough year and a half, but I've been incredibly fortunate. I've been one of the lucky few, and I count my blessings every day. Professionally, I certainly saw a reduction in income, as I think, we all have. I was very fortunate in that it didn't bottom out like a lot of people. I was in a very good place, with a diversified skill set. And I think that's key, right? Diversified skill set. I want to come back to that, but I think it's, I was in the right place at the right time, and knew the right people, had the right connections, and was able to pivot into virtual event production. I don't want to say pretty easily, the first few months, it was absolutely drinking from a fire hose, was part of a team, and when we brought new people onto the team, I like to joke that we were all there to help them learn, because we all had weeks of experience doing this. So, we've been doing this for days, so we're happy to help however we can.
That picture did great.
Yeah, right. So there was a lot of figuring stuff out, a lot of learning lessons, a lot of on the job training, a lot of trying to reassure your clients that you knew exactly what you were doing when in fact you didn't. And also being very upfront at times, going, hey, I know this is your first virtual event. We're sort of figuring out how to do this together, because, just like you had to turn your show to virtual, I've had to turn your show to virtual. So I've been very fortunate. I count my blessings every day, because there's absolutely been a reduction in income, a rise in stress, long days, long hours. But I've continued to work. I count myself very, very fortunate in that, because I know a lot of people in our industry have not been as fortunate. I know a lot of people who are out there, working retail, doing construction, doing that kind of stuff, just waiting for the gigs to come back. And they are going to come back, but I've been very fortunate that I haven't had to completely go out and reinvent myself. And on the flip side, try to find a silver lining in everything. And there's not a lot of silver linings in a cloud this big for our business. But, pre-COVID, I traveled 280, 200 days a year. I've got 3 kids that we adopted, and I was home quite a bit when we first had them, but I have not, in the almost 9 years that I've had my kids, been home for this long of an unbroken stretch. And being home, being able to spend time with them, spending time with my wife, kind of getting a taste of what a non-entertainment lifestyle is. I've met neighbors.
Wow.
I've lived in this house for 13 years. I didn't know a single one of my neighbors, and now I've got some really close friends that live here in this neighborhood. So there's silver linings to this, right? There's definitely a feeling of, when normal comes back, do we want to get back to that exact same normal? Is 200 days, for some of us, 300, and I know one guy, 320, 325 days a year on the road.
Right.
Is that the normal we want? And that's something everybody has to answer for themselves. And, but so there's a silver lining, it hasn't been all roses, but I've been very lucky, and I try to find the positive in that.
I find that very beautiful. People think I was crazy when I used to tell them I was out on the road 265 days a year back in band touring. They're like, how do you do that? There's 365 days in a year total. I'm like, yeah, I'm basically home weekends.
Yep. Yep.
Go figure. And my weekends aren't necessarily what your weekend would be considered a weekend either. That's probably a Monday and a Tuesday for most everybody else. I have the barber weekend, as we would call it.
Right.
But hopping on planes, hopping on buses, hopping to hotels, I can tell you what every arena, major and minor, look like. I can tell you how to get from the dock to every dressing room, but I could not tell you how to get there on the street or tell you what the front lobby looks like because it's not in my wheelhouse. People are like, man, you've traveled all over the world. You must have seen all the sights. Not so much. You know, what we do is a career, it's a passion, it's a love, but it's also a family, you know, and that's because we spend so much time with people outside of our immediate family. Like you said, you've been in a place where you've been at for 13 years and you barely knew anybody, and now you've become very close with a lot of them. That is something that is amazing that I am happy for you that you were able to establish. You know, I personally think it is great to know who you live around, especially with this day and age with everything that's going on, and gives me personally closure to know that when I travel, that the people that live around me are helping to protect my wife and kids, you know, and I'm happy for you that you were able to establish that foundation. Well, Bryan, I greatly appreciate you for coming on the show, but before I let you go, there's one thing and one thing only, not 20, but one thing that people of the world on the interwebs need to know about you. What might that be, bud?
Oh man, that's a good one.
It always gets them. It's the
It always, I think I just want to reassure people that, you know, it's been a rough road, but things are coming back. You know, we will get back to some semblance of normal, and you know, people are getting back to work. The world is opening back up, and it's going to be great when it does. You know, you hit on something interesting there, and I think one of the things that draws us all to this job and that draws us to this is sort of the love of the road and the love of a new place all the time. And you know, I miss being on the road, and I miss seeing things. And one of the things I think I loved the most about traveling, and one of the things I liked best about corporate, is that you did get to see some of the places you were. You'd go somewhere and sit for a week, right? And so maybe you have a dark day, maybe you just have evenings, maybe you add a day so you can go sightseeing before you fly home. Been all over the world, and you know, I think for me, what I'm most look forward to about the world opening back up is just being able to see more of it and enjoying people and just enjoying the fact that this is a big world with crazy things and a lot of people that don't all look like us, don't all think like us, don't all sound like us. And it's important to see that world and understand other points of view, other places, other ways of doing things, and just enjoy the trip.
I love it. I love it. Well, Bryan, tell the folks out there how they can get in touch with you. What's your socials? How can they make in contact with you in case they want to possibly hire you for a gig, or even just shoot out a message and say, hey, I'm at an event and I'm lost. Can you help me out?
Yeah, absolutely. Easiest way is my email. It's brian@bryan-naegele.com. Maybe you can throw that up on the screen because it's hard to spell. And from social media, I don't have a lot that's like public social media, but you can hit me up on my Instagram. It's Bryan Naegele, all one word. And that's probably the best way.
We will definitely have all that information in the description, so that way they don't have to keep rewinding and rewinding to make sure they get the spelling correctly, because it is a little bit different than what it sounds like. You're probably going to spell it wrong and get to some other weirdo out there, because the weirdos that are here on us are the best ones.
Absolutely. We don't do it for the money. We do it because it's fun and challenging. So
most definitely. Well, Bryan, thanks again for coming on the show. And Hey, y'all, Bryan Naegele.
I'm Bryan Naegele, and you've met the crew.
Meet the Crew with your host, Lloyd Ellis.